Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. It's been 2 years since the first cases of COVID-19 in Kentucky. Southern Kentucky doctors say the virus is still infecting people, but it's not nearly as serious. They say the medical community is much better prepared for what's happening now, but urge people to not let their guard down. WYMT's Phil Pendleton spoke to a doctor in Somerset and has more.
Moments in time, easy to remember.
We were just talking, I can remember the first case that was diagnosed out of this clinic.
That was about the time nearly everything in the state shut down with 200 cases. 2 years later, it's still a major issue.
For instance, last Friday here in Pulaski County, we still had 88 cases in that one day.
Pulaski remains in the red and is in the top 10 of the most cases in the state.
And you look and you think about where you think this illness would have went. We would have hoped that it would have calmed down or completely left by now, like some of the other respiratory illnesses we saw, but we're still dealing with it on a day-to-day basis.
Dr. Dixon tells me that really nothing could prepare you for COVID-19. Some years back, you could not get ready for what they experienced over the past 2 years, but he says they have learned a lot going forward. He said the biggest lessons learned that mask work and hand washing prevents the spread of illness. He also stressed the importance of vaccines.
We've learned that definitely that immunization makes the biggest difference. If there's effective vaccines for anything down the road, people need to get them early and they need to keep up with their boosters.
Lake Cumberland is still admitting COVID patients and putting some on ventilators, but the cases of Omicron are not nearly as severe as once feared.
Right now, we're actually at the lowest number of cases we've been in quite some time here at the hospital.
Despite CDC guidance lifting masking requirements, Dr. Dixon says you probably need to hang on to it a little bit longer, especially for areas still in the red. In Pulaski County, Phil Pendleton, WKYT.
The doctor tells us that he thought COVID-19 would have lasted months and not years. Officials say the Louisville Zoo is temporarily closing some areas in an effort to protect birds from catching avian flu. The action comes after recently confirmed Kentucky cases of avian flu in wild birds west of Jefferson County. Avian flu can be contagious in birds and can affect several species. The zoo said in a statement that public walk-through areas were closed this week and some birds were moved to protected areas as a precaution. Areas closed include the Forest Bird Trail, the African Penguin exhibits, Steller's Sea Eagle Aviary, and Lorikeet Landing. The zoo says no birds are currently showing signs of the disease. We've been dealing with a breezy and overcast day around the region, and some of us also still dealing with some of that heavy rain into portions of the mountains. Outside right now, you see the overcast still with us out front of WYMT here in Hazard. Still watching the last of that cloud cover pushing on through. Downtown Whitesburg, no, it's not nighttime, but it is rather cloudy there at the moment. They sit right now at 50. West-southwest winds at 6 miles per hour, meaning we're still not quite done with that front pushing through. 10 to 15 miles per hour on those wind speeds right now. They've come down a little, as have those gusts down to closer to 25 miles per hour versus 30 miles per hour. And you see those temperatures dropping into the 40s after highs well earlier on today near 70. The last of the showers pushing out, that cold front pushing through. We're just about done with this particular round of rain. But we're not done completely. That's why, even if you don't have the WYMT weather app, go ahead and download it. You're going to need it later on this week because we're not done with the rainfall as we head through the middle of the week. I'll have the latest on when we warm those temperatures back up and when we bring showers back into the region coming up in just a few minutes. Steve? All right, Evan, thank you. President Biden held a video conference with European allies for about an hour and 20 minutes today as his administration considers reversing course on banning Russian oil imports. The United Nations says the invasion of Ukraine is creating the largest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. CBS's Skylar Henry has more from the White House.
In the 12 days since Russia invaded Ukraine, oil prices have skyrocketed to their highest levels in more than a decade. Now the Biden administration is considering a ban on Russian energy imports, while also hoping to lessen the pain for Americans at the pump.
No decision has been made at this point. What the president is most focused on is ensuring we are continuing to take steps to deliver punishing economic consequences on Putin.
President Biden discussed Ukraine in a video conference with the leaders of France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, as some European allies also look for ways to cut consumption of Russian oil.
You can't simply close down use of oil and gas overnight, even from Russia.
Ukrainian negotiators say a third round of talks with the Russians have yielded some progress on civilian evacuations. So far, failed ceasefire attempts have upset efforts to create safe corridors. The United Nations says more than 1.7 million people have fled Ukraine since the invasion began. The Biden administration is in discussions with allies on how to backfill countries like Poland, should Poland fulfill Ukraine's request for more fighter jets.
There are a number of challenging practical questions, including how the planes would actually be transferred from Poland to Ukraine.
The Pentagon has ordered 500 more U.S. troops to Europe to bolster NATO's eastern flank, where Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting allies.
Our message to Russia, to President Putin, end the war. End it now.
Blinken says there have been no decisions on keeping U.S. forces in the region permanently. Skyler Henry, CBS News, the White House.
This evening, members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee are receiving a closed-door briefing on the situation in Ukraine from State Department officials. Later this week, Congress is expected to take up the Biden administration's request for $10 billion in additional humanitarian and military aid for Ukraine. About 300 soldiers are being deployed from Fort Knox to Germany and Poland in support of NATO allies. The men and women are from Victory Corps or V-Corps. Their mission is to deter further Russian aggression. Loved ones got to say goodbye today. Many of these soldiers have been deployed before, but this is a first-time deployment for several junior soldiers. A Lexington coffee shop is helping people in Ukraine. Today only, Father Jim Sitchko is paying for all orders, and all proceeds will go to Ukraine refugees overseas. It's a mission that's near and dear to the shop owner. She was born in Ukraine and raised in Moldova. Her friend has been on vacation in the U.S. and is having a hard time getting back home.
Они боятся, они постоянно звучат сирена, воздушная тревога, им приходится бежать в подвал, в бомбоубежище. The sirens are constantly ringing.
Oha says her family tells her bombs are going off constantly. She hopes the war will end soon. Meanwhile, TikTok announced it is restricting some features from Russian users in light of President Vladimir Putin's new law penalizing what he calls fake news. The social media app is suspending live streaming and new content from the country for the time being. Under a new law, anyone that spreads what Russia terms misinformation about its military could face 15 years in prison. Non-government related Russian TikTok stars have gone silent, as simply using words like war and invasion could be a crime. TikTok says its app messaging service will continue as it evaluates the policy. A group of attorneys general in several states across the country are opening an investigation into whether the video sharing platform TikTok is harmful for children. An investigation last year looked into Instagram for similar concerns. Pediatric neuroscientists are saying that social media can affect children's mental health and may even cause or worsen stress and anxiety. They also add that parents and kids need to be aware of potential dangers.
It's something that we really have to address for the well-being and the safety of the young generation.
The investigations into the platform are aimed at seeing whether the companies behind the social media accounts violated consumer protection laws and put children at risk. You know that phrase, no good deed goes unpunished? All firefighters at a park in Indianapolis sure do. And if you look really closely at the top center of your screen, sitting on a branch, this is the punishment for Owen's good deed. The 17-year-old climbed up the tree, about 35 feet up, in fact, to rescue a cat. He had no trouble getting up there, but getting down was another story. Firefighters showed up first, but they had to call in the rope rescue team, who then called the tactical team. It took about an hour to get the kid down. Other than a few scrapes, Owen is just fine. The cat, reacting in the most cat-like way possible, made no effort to climb down and actually seemed to sort of enjoy the commotion. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, old credit cards crowding your wallet? Is it time to clean house, or should you hang on to that plastic? Experts weigh in tonight's Watching Your Wallet.
And cold air continues to filter in behind our cold front. I'll have the latest on when our next round of rain looks to work in as well, coming up.
WYMT News.